Yes, let's talk about custom objects and whether or not you need them. So my name's Kyle, as Tanya said. This is not a picture of me, obviously. I figure if you don't know what I look like, you will by the end of this presentation. This is the rest of my family. This picture's actually a couple of years old, but it's the cutest one we've ever taken, so I keep using it. I'm an inbound sales professor at HubSpot Academy. I'm the author of 6 HubSpot Academy certification courses. As Tanya said, daily LinkedIn video creator. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll get daily updates, mostly new features coming to HubSpot because our product team moves at a very fast rate. I'm a big fan of raw veggies, tortillas, and Billy Joel, which is just a long bullet point to say I'm a very boring person. A married father of 3, as you can see, and bishop of a Latter-day Saint congregation. One thing I should mention is I myself am now a Hug leader. I recently started a Hug for HubSpot admins. So if you'd like to come check that out, I'll just drop that URL in the chat there. It's a lot. That's why I've had so many events this week. Lots of things happening over there. To get down to business, here's our agenda. I'll talk about what a custom object is. And then the bulk of our time together, I'm going to focus on this question of, do you actually need a custom object? Because that is a big thing for people to try to figure out. I'm going to give you some clear ways to do that. Standard object versus a custom object, what the difference is, how to think about that. And then at the end, we'll have an AMA. I call it Ask Me Anything because I can't guarantee I have answers to everything, but I do want you to consider me your access to HubSpot as an organization. So ask me your HubSpot questions. I'm happy to, if I don't know the answer, take them and connect you to someone who does know the answer. Take advantage of me being here. That's why I'm here. So what even is a custom object? Before I answer that question, let me answer what even is an object. In the context of HubSpot, an object is just something that gets represented in your CRM by a record that has properties and a timeline and can be associated with other records in your CRM. So the most basic, fundamental, popular objects inside HubSpot are contacts, companies, deals, and tickets. In the last year or two, we've rolled out a lot of other objects that have this same index page experience and record experience: calls, invoices, marketing events, payments if you're in the US. I know some of you are very technical. This is my sassy HubSpot expert picture asking, hey, Kyle, what about blank, right? There are lots of object-like things inside of HubSpot that are not included on the list I just shared. But for me, when I say object, when I'm talking about a CRM object, I mean a thing that has an index page that looks like this and a record that looks like this. Those other ones, if you want to talk in a technical sense and programming and structural design and database management, they are objects in a way, but they don't have these same characteristics. And I'm specifically interested in these index pages and these record pages. So with that as context, these are objects in HubSpot plus custom objects. And a custom object is just an object inside HubSpot that's defined by you. Every object represents something. Contacts represent people, companies represent organizations, deals are for your sales in progress, tickets are for service requests. Custom objects are literally for whatever the heck you feel like. Bank account, right? A very important but niche piece of documentation required by the German government. Whatever it is you need that HubSpot doesn't have standard, you can create that and it'll be there for you. So what can you use them for? These are some real world examples I've seen. Shipments and deliveries is a very popular one, right? So your deal closes, you've made the sale. Maybe you have to ship it in multiple different packages and you want to track all of those, or maybe there's some other delivery process you need to keep track of. Custom objects can be very good for this. You can associate it to the deal, you can have automation make things happen, and that's great. Locations, right? Either for companies or for individuals. If someone has multiple shipping addresses when they're your customer, you could create those as custom objects that could be associated with them. Vehicles, if you manage a fleet of some kind, I've seen boats, I've seen cars, there's lots of different things there. Real estate listings is a fun one because you can connect these objects to our CMS and use them to create dynamic pages and things. So anytime you're going to be listing a lot of information on your website, a custom object could be a good way to go. And then drones, actually, I include drones here because the very first HubSpot customer to ever create a custom object used it to track drones. They had these huge industrial surveying drones and they needed to keep track of them in HubSpot. And so they were able to do that. So now that we've talked about what they are, like I said, I want to spend the bulk of my time on this question of, do I need a custom object? And I am always biased in the direction of no, because a lot of times you just don't need it. And if custom objects are only available in the enterprise version of HubSpot. And so unless you have that, they might not be an option to you unless you upgrade. And I want you to understand, you can use HubSpot for a whole lot of stuff without needing a custom object. But sometimes there are really clear cases where you need a custom object. Some of you heard me and Tanya talking about bank accounts. I think that's just a brilliant example of, yes, the best way for us to track this is a custom object. But for a host of other things, you're not going to need a custom object. And here is a framework. I believe it's about 5 questions that you can ask yourself to figure out if a custom object is what you need. At the most basic level, you've got to ask yourself, is the source of truth for this data HubSpot or another system? So an example of this is your sales data versus your accounting data. Your sales data, HubSpot is absolutely going to be your source of truth for if you're using HubSpot as your CRM. All those phone calls, all those emails, all those meetings, the progress of your deals, all of that is going to be stored in HubSpot. Absolutely a great use case for objects like contacts, companies, and deals. Your accounting data, on the other hand, HubSpot isn't really an accounting system. We have great integrations with systems like QuickBooks, for example. But you wouldn't want to create something in HubSpot just to track that. For external systems, whether you use it for compliance reasons or because it's just the better tool for the job, you can view external data inside HubSpot using custom cards. Most often you're going to encounter custom cards through integrations, but if you have developer resources or if you are yourself or developer savvy, you can create these for yourself. I don't have an example of one here in my portal, but this is a card, right? Here we can see the company this contact is associated with. If you have QuickBooks integration, or if you have like a PandaDoc integration, or if you have really a lot of different integrations, you'll have a section for that here in the right sidebar. You can have little windows into those external systems. That's going to be a much better solution than trying to build some sort of custom object in most cases. So that's question 1. Question 2 is, does the record of this data need to be dynamic or immutable? And what I mean, a dynamic can change over time. Immutable is permanent. And a good way to think about the difference is a phone number versus a phone call. So on a contact record or a company record, you're going to have a phone number field. That is dynamic, right? If I'm a contact in your database and I change phone providers and get a new phone number, you don't really care to keep the old phone number because it's no good anymore. You want to overwrite it with the new phone number so that that is current and accurate all the time. On the other hand, if I am your customer and you've had a phone call with me, you want the record of that phone call, the duration, the outcome, the content of it, when it occurred, to be immutable. You want a trustworthy record of exactly what happened at a point in time. And that is not going to be updated or changeable, right? That's what I mean by immutable. If you're looking for immutable records, you really want custom timeline events. And again, this is sort of a developer sort of thing, or lots of integrations have them. So here's the timeline, right? What you're seeing here are all just native HubSpot things like a call and like a deal activity and list membership. But if you, again, a lot of our integrations will put things on the timeline here, interactions people have with these third-party systems in whatever way. And if you're looking for an immutable record, that's what you want to be thinking of. A custom object will not be the right way to do that because custom objects are inherently dynamic and can be updated and changed over time. Question 3 is the relationship between this data and other HubSpot data one-to-one or one-to-many? So think of a billing address versus a shipping address, right? If I'm your customer, you might require me to have just one billing address. And maybe for that, you use just the standard properties for street address and city and region and those sorts of things. And that's going to be one-to-one. Every contact has only one billing address. Shipping addresses, on the other hand, maybe you let me ship things to different places, to my home, to my office, to my family. That's where a custom object might start making sense because you could associate multiple of those with one person. But anytime it's one-to-one, you're just going to want to use custom properties, right? And custom properties, they can appear over here on the left sidebar. If you have professional or enterprise version of HubSpot, you can create these sections that can even be, conditional and appear only in certain circumstances. In any version of HubSpot, you can create property groups. And so if you have multiple properties you need to keep together, you can do that. That's going to be your best bet if it's a one-to-one relationship. And then the one of the final questions here is this data primarily inward or outward facing? And this is where it really becomes pretty nuanced. If you think of like a testimonial versus a support ticket, right? A testimonial is, you get that from your customer and you just have it so that you can put it on your website and other customers can trust you, or potential customers can, right? That could be a really great thing to build in, for example, HubDB, if you know how to use that. Whereas a support ticket, that's more for your internal communication. You're not going to be publishing that externally anywhere. Maybe, through like a customer portal or something where they can seek updates, but you're not going to want to put it on your website exactly. So that's a better use for an object, right? And we have a standard ticket object. But for things like testimonials that are purely for your website, you're going to want to use HubDB. It's a really powerful tool. It can do a lot of different things. And honestly, HubDB, we do have the ability now to take record information from even your custom objects and use that on the website. I mentioned real estate listings recently. That's a really great use case for that, where you want an internal record for updating, customer interest and value and things, but you want to be able to put it on your website. But HubDB gives you such a rich amount of images and videos and all kinds of things you can do to make really beautiful web pages in a way that custom objects would be pretty limited. If you are really interested in the difference between custom objects and HubDB, I have this video. It's almost 2 years old now, so certainly things have changed. But the team that built HubDB did a webinar talking about when to use HubDB and when to use custom objects. If you really want to go deep on that, they know way more about it than I do, and that is now in the chat for you. So these are the kind of main questions I want you thinking about. And again, just to recap, if the source of truth is outside of HubSpot, you're going to want custom cards. Use some sort of integration or get a developer to use API calls or something so that you can just get windows from HubSpot into that external system. Don't go building an object in HubSpot for that. Does the record need to be dynamic or immutable? If you want it to be immutable, if it just needs to be a record of a thing that happened at a particular point in time, you want that on the timeline. Again, whether that comes through an integration or through developer work, that's where you're going to want to live. If the relationship with this data to other HubSpot data is one-to-one, use properties. Even if you need a bunch of them, if it can only, if this data is only going to be relevant to one record at a time, properties are going to be the way to go. And then primarily inward or outward facing. Again, if you create a custom object, there are things you can do to make dynamic pages on your website and such, but it's going to be much more limited than HubDB, which is sort of infinitely flexible. And so if it really is just content, consider HubDB before you think about a custom object. But if you need HubSpot to be the source of truth for a dynamic internal piece of data that's in a one-to-many relationship with other data, use an object. And again, I think this bank account idea is that's a chef's kiss example, right? Like my savings account belongs to both me and my wife. So we would want an object that's associated to the Kyle contact and to the Katie contact. And then I might have multiple bank accounts. And so we would need them to be able to be associated all to me at the same time. That is just crystal clear example of when you do need an object. Now, just because you need an object doesn't mean you need a custom object, right? I mentioned support tickets earlier. We have a standard object for that. Please don't go creating a custom object for support tickets. Please don't go creating a custom object for anything dealing with revenue. Just use deals for that, right? But rule number one, I think, is if it's a person, store it as a contact. This rule sounds straightforward. It's actually very controversial, as you will see with these examples I'm about to go through. But all the time, people want to build custom objects for some particular kind of person. But I think it's a mistake because contacts are a very special record type inside of HubSpot. There are so many things you can do with contacts that you can't do with any other kind of record. Sending marketing emails and adding to lists and segmenting that way. And all of that magic goes away when you create a custom object, right? Custom object can do a lot of things. You can enroll them in workflows. You can filter and sort them, but contacts have a lot of just special sauce baked into them. And you don't want to give that up for the sake of organization. So again, here's our sassy HubSpot user saying, Kyle, what about, and it's always, I feel like education related stuff. What about students versus parents, or students versus alumni versus donors? So let's talk through some of these. Use case number one, right? We're a university. We have students, we have alumni, we have donors. We have very different interactions with these people. We don't want to get our wires crossed. We want to keep them as separate as possible so we're not mixing them up. So Kyle, doesn't it make sense for us to build a custom object? And I say no. I say absolutely not. Do not do that, because you're going to want to email them, right? You're going to want to call them, right? All of that, you need the contact record. That's really what you need. And often a student will graduate and become alumni, right? And how are you going to take that student record and turn it into an alumni record? Or are you going to have duplicate records? It's just a mess, right? You want a contact to represent one person, and you're likely going to want to have some sort of drop-down property, or maybe like multiple checkboxes, right? This person can be a donor and alumni at the same time. We're just going to have a type property that says what kind of contact is this, and then we can segment them out and make sure we're not sending student emails to alumni or alumni emails to donors, or whatever the case may be. But when you're dealing with categories that aren't mutually exclusive, I really think you should create a drop-down property, or even if they are mutually exclusive, a drop-down property called type can just take you a really long distance and is so much simpler and easier to maintain than a custom object would be. And then you still have all that contact magic. Case number two, high school students and parents, right? Now we have a clear case where the students are not going to be parents at the same time as being a student, right? It's not possible for a teenager to have a teenaged child. So they're two completely separate groups. One person cannot be both at the same time. A drop-down property would work, but I want to associate students to parents, right? We need to know who belongs to each other. Now, can I create a custom object? And I'm going to say no. I'm still going to say no. If you ever want to be able to send emails to your students, you're going to need them to be contacts. Same for parents. If you have any interest in keeping contact with students after they graduate, contact is the way to go. And you've already suggested a great solution with drop-down properties, so why not just do that? Now our sassy friend comes back and says, not so fast, Kyle. You can't associate contacts to contacts, can you? This is a pain point. It's a struggle, but we are working to fix it. And I am not going to spoil any surprises, but if you want to come to a meetup of the Admin Hug, I have an event coming up called Deep Dive on Record Associations, where the product team will be revealing some things that are coming very soon that will make use cases like this much easier. So just register for that, come, and then all of your concerns about using contacts in this way will go away. I promise you that. Let's look at a final use case here. What about babies at a daycare? All right, these are infants. They don't have email addresses. We were never under any circumstance going to email them or call them. We just need to keep track of them. We only interact with parents, but we need to see which babies the parents have. Sometimes parents have more than one baby, right? Older and younger siblings that are close enough in age to both be at the daycare at the same time, or maybe twins or triplets come up. Can this pretty please be a custom object? And to this, I say, okay, fine. All right, let's do it. As far as your database is concerned, the babies aren't really contacts because you're not going to be communicating with them. Creating a custom object for a baby would give you the ability to keep track of the baby's name and age and special needs and whatever else you need to keep track of. If again, you need enterprise to be able to create custom objects. So if you don't have that, I think you can make something else work. But sure, let's go ahead and make a baby object. How about that? Didn't mean to come to a hug and say we were going to make a baby, but apparently that's where we're at now. So creating custom objects recently became much easier. If we had done this 6 months ago, I would say now hold on to your hats while we run some API calls. Not necessary anymore. Two big things that just came out. First is this data model overview, where you can see all the different objects in your account and what they're associated with. And you can turn things on and off and see how the different things look. This is really helpful to get a visual sense of what's going on. But when you're actually ready, you've decided we're going to build this custom object. You just come to the custom object and you click create custom object. And actually, before I do that, one last thing I want to show you on a contact record. This is true of any record, but just so you can understand what I'm doing as I build this custom object, there are two very important terms for you to know. One is primary display property, and the other is secondary display property. So primary display property is this big one right here. For contacts, it's the name of the person. For companies, it's the name of the company. For a custom object, it might be like an ID number or something else. For our baby objects, it's going to be the name of the baby, right? Secondary display property, if you look over here, so here's a company associated with this, right? Again, here's the primary display property is the name of the company right here. Secondary display property in this case is the domain. A secondary display for contacts, I believe, is email address. But just, you need to be mindful when you're looking at a record, what do you want the big top line item to be here? When you're looking at it from a record it's associated to, what do you want the top 2 items to be, okay? So if we now go to our custom object builder and we hit build or create, we got to give it a name. So this is the baby object, and we got to tell it the plural because plurals aren't always as easy as just putting an S on the end. So we have baby and we have babies. Primary display property is going to be the baby's name, right? And that's just going to be single line text. Right now in this creation flow, you can only choose single line text and number, but the other options will come soon. That's something we're actively working on. You can require a unique value here, but we're not going to do that, right? It is conceivable you would have 2 different babies with the same name. Secondary display property, I don't know. For your babies, what do you care most about? Maybe it's age for some reason. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. But for now, we would just do name and age, and then we can add additional properties here if we wanted to, right? I listed several on my slide. Maybe you want special needs or something else. But we can just create this and literally just as easy as that. There's now a babies object here inside my my CRM. The one last step you want to take is associations, right? So we want to create a new association. We want babies to be associated with contacts, and that is going to be their parents, right? So now, if we go back to, for example, this contact, actually I would have to add it to the sidebar probably, but we could create babies from here and associate it with this contact. So that is the whole process for creating a custom object. Once that's done, you can import them just like any other object. You can enroll them in workflows just like any other object. You can create, filtered views just like any other object. It'll behave just the same way as contacts and companies and deals and tickets all work. So hopefully that process is familiar to you. So with that, I just gave you a whirlwind tour of what custom objects are and how to decide if you need one and what they do, what buttons you need to click. I would love to hear from you. What are you confused about? What questions do you have? What concerns do you have? What thoughts do you have? I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually see you all. And I would love to just talk for a bit about custom objects and how you're feeling.
Tim, you've got your hand raised. You can dive right in.
Yeah, sure. Just want to be, I don't want to disturb anybody. I told you that I created this, in my mind, it wasn't custom object, but after your presentation, I think it's like a bit too small to be a custom object, because based on what you say, like a custom object can be connected to context, and it's much more technical and functional than what I did in the form that I created. It was just a button. Yeah, here you can upload a file, and what you did was like way bigger. And also the customer I talked about is just CMS starter. So I think it's limited to 10 custom objects, like the smaller ones.
Yeah. So I mean, I honestly, I'm happy to hear you say that, because I sort of had that same thought as you were talking about it. I think it depends a bit. I mean, it's totally fine to have a custom object that only has 1 or 2 properties in it, if that's what you need. But there are also, like file upload properties and things. So you could just create a form if it literally is just a PDF that needs to be attached to a contact. I think you could facilitate that without using a custom object. But if there's data inside that PDF that you would want to collect and make into a custom object, and especially if for any reason you would have more than one of those associated with a contact at the same time, that's the piece where I think it really starts to make a lot of sense to have a custom object. Going back to the bank example, right? Like the bank account, I mean, Tanya, you could tell us what it's like in reality, but in my mind, it's just like the type of account and the account number, right? It might just be those two properties. You can maybe have like balance or something if you want to, but that's probably going to be managed in some other system. So just, I'm seeing nodding here. So yeah. Just like type of account,
like
right? This
important account information, definitely not in HubSpot, right, because that's not okay.
We are not.
But yeah, like account numbers so that you can search it if you need to, because sometimes members will need to, like users of the HubSpot portal will need to find a certain account. So we have it in there so it's searchable. But it would be like account number, associated contacts, the jurisdiction that it's in, because they have multiple countries that they operate in. And then the type of product. So like, is this a mortgage? Is it a credit card? So that you can filter that way. Yeah.
So that's 3, maybe 4 properties, right? And then by default, you'll probably also get like a create date property or something. But I mean, you don't have to have a lot of properties for it to be worthwhile. The thing that really makes that a solid custom object case is that it's not one-to-one, right? Like I might have multiple bank accounts. This bank account might have multiple people connected to it. And when you need that level of flexibility, now you're definitely in custom object territory.
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding from my side because I'm talking about properties and you're talking about custom objects. I think that's way bigger of a scale than what my or the need of my customers actually.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so a custom property, perfect. Yeah, you can do a file upload property. You can put that in a form, and you're there. I think that's a great solution.
Yeah, but for future projects, it's pretty interesting to see like your presentation and how to create one.
Yeah,
what needs to be connected. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and for all of you, if you're ever like, I don't know if this should be a custom object or not, hit me up over LinkedIn or send me an email or something. I love brainstorming this stuff. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. Just drop that in the chat there so you can get a hold of me if you need to.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Kyle.
Yeah.
Could we do workflows to create custom objects based on deals? If we had deal properties and say that deal closes, like moves to closed 1, could we automatically create a custom object based on this?
Yeah. So let me just, okay, well, I will just share my screen so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. I don't know for sure if are you seeing HubSpot? Am I showing? Okay, great. So I don't know for sure if I in here have, let's see, deals are associated shipments. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I've created this custom shipments object. And so we could create a deal-based workflow where from scratch. Oh, great. All right. Yep. Come on. So if we did a deal-based workflow, we could say, enrollment criteria, we would say deal stage is, closed 1. Perfect. So as soon as we're there, we're going to create a record for a shipment. And I mean, we would need some way of filling in the name of it, but then it would be associated with this deal, and that would just be it. So
I just have a quick question for you as well, Kyle.
Yeah.
It's Fernina here. I'm trying to work out a way or an idea of bulk uploading custom objects to associate with a deal. I know you can upload a list, but the reps are just reluctant to do that. Is there any other way you can, say, add 10 custom objects to a deal all at the same time? I was trying to do it through a form or different other ways, but I couldn't quite think of a best practice. Anything? Any ideas that you could think of?
I mean, import is definitely the easiest way.
Yeah.
The other thing is, right, so let's here, if we go to our settings real quick, and we will go to our deal settings, and we will record customization, and we will customize the right sidebar to make sure it shows shipments. Oh, I guess it must. They're all here. Anyway. Yep. Okay, right there. I see it. Shipments. Great. So if we go to a deal record, what we can do is we'll just grab test deal. That seems good. And now we have to, okay, Zoom, you're driving me nuts. Okay, here we go. I can see this, I just can't see you all. I really want to see both at the same time. So you can, I mean, from here, you can add them. It's gonna be one at a time, but you can always like create and add another, right? And this button here makes it pretty easy to go fairly fast, especially if you're just filling in 1 or 2 properties. But as far as bulk,
the idea is for a user to ideally fill in a form on a landing page and have that information captured somehow that it would transfer into a custom object and then associate with the deal automatically, so that rep wouldn't have to touch the process at all. But I know that's quite a tricky thing to do, because on a form you're only associated with one domain, for example, or one email. So there's no, I was trying to think outside the box, but this is probably the best way to do it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so I mean, given enough time with whiteboard, maybe you and I could figure out a way to make the form work. But I think in the end, the experience would be basically the same as this. It would still be 1 at a time. Because I'm just trying to think through, you have a form, you're populating the properties, then you can use that same workflow action I just showed to create records. But I mean, it would still be 1 at a time, and to get it associated to the right deal, I think would be very tricky.
That's the thing where I keep catching out. That's fine. I just want to double check my logic on it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Other thoughts or questions?
Just one other thing. I don't want to be interrupting other people. Sorry. I have a situation where there was a kind of parent-child setup in a lot of companies, and they're trying to separate out those child companies as a custom object instead, because it just kind of makes more sense for the business and the way they structure things. And so there's a lot of properties that I'm going to have to recreate in those custom objects as well. Is there any quick way of doing that, or is there, just an upload, or is there a way to migrate or change the property type?
So if you could export out just the relevant companies, and I would have to think through that, but assuming you could, and you got them into a spreadsheet, then you could define your custom object, and you could, in the import process, right? If we just go to, there's an import button right here. Great. So you can, file from computer, 1 file, 1 object. You can see shipments and pets. My custom objects are here. So I think you could just take that exact same spreadsheet you exported and import it as shipments. And then when you get to, I don't have a spreadsheet to show you an example, but when you get to the page where you map the properties, you would have a whole bunch of property does not exist, property does not exist, property. But from that page right there, you could just create property.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that would be the fastest way to get those all there.
That's super. Thank you so much.
Yep. What else? So I was telling Tanya before this started, I recognize that custom object education is a place. HubSpot Academy needs to step up a little bit. So this presentation, I created this deck as like a first foray into teaching people custom objects. Is it helpful? Did it cover the right things? Are there any, do you have any feedback on how it could be better? Any thoughts?
I can give you my feedback if you want. I think I'm the best example, because I was confused between custom object and custom properties first, since I started using HubSpot, I think in February or March this year. And I mean, the Academy is best for getting a first glimpse on how properties or tools work, but you have to create your own and get your own experience on it. So that would be a great academy lesson for sure.
Cool.
Custom objects and maybe also some tasks you can do. So like creating a custom object and manually mapping, or also what Maureen had for like an example where you can import data and also do a task on that, how that works would be awesome. Definitely. And super helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Custom objects and association labels, ERD. Yeah, for sure. There is a lesson right now from 2 years ago when custom objects first got released, and it talks about ERDs, but back then association labels did not exist. So it definitely needs to be updated. That would be a key part of this, I think.
Something I find going through this process with our clients is thinking about what they need to report on, and sometimes thinking backwards on how do we need to show this data, can walk us back into how do we need to collect this data. That could be something
really smart.
Worth consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, that's all I've got. I've dropped my email and my LinkedIn into the chat. All of you are welcome to reach out to me with any questions about anything, I guess. HubSpot related questions you'll have the best luck with. But thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Tanya, for organizing and having me here. It's been great.
Thank you for coming. We all really appreciate it. So the next event that we're going to do as a Hub group is going to be on building membership sites in HubSpot CMS. So I'm going to drop just a link to our group again in here. If you want to sign up and join us for that. And I hope to see you all soon. We'll package up this recording and send it out. If you have any other follow-up questions, please reach out to Kyle, reach out to me, and we can keep the education on custom objects rolling.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone.